My sister's wedding was a nightmare, so I exposed her secret at the rehearsal dinner, and now my family is furious. Hello Reddit. I am Deborah, and I am 31 years old. My younger sister, Jessica, is 28. She's getting married next weekend to her fiancé, Mark, who is 30. We have always had a complicated family dynamic, mostly centered around Jessica being the golden child and me being, well, not. It's not that my parents actively dislike me, but Jessica can do no wrong in their eyes, and I've always been held to a different, often stricter, standard. Growing up, Jessica got away with everything. If we both broke a vase, somehow it was always my fault. If she got a bad grade, it was the teacher's fault. If I got a good grade, it was expected. This pattern has continued into adulthood. Jessica is flighty, impulsive, and often inconsiderate, but it's always excused as her being passionate or free-spirited. If I ever dared to express a need or want that inconvenienced her even slightly, I was selfish and difficult. You get the picture. So when Jessica got engaged about a year ago, I knew the wedding planning process was going to be interesting. And by interesting, I mean a complete and utter nightmare fueled by Jessica's ever-growing sense of entitlement and my parents' unwavering support of her every whim. From the moment Jessica announced her engagement, it was all about her all the time. And I mean all the time. My mother, Susan, bless her heart, has basically become Jessica's wedding planner, personal assistant, and emotional support animal rolled into one. My father, Robert, is just writing checks and nodding along, seemingly happy to avoid any conflict. And me, well, I'm expected to be the dutiful older sister, ready to jump whenever Jessica snaps her fingers. The first sign of trouble was the venue. Jessica initially wanted a destination wedding in Italy. Italy, Reddit. For a couple who, let's just say, are not exactly rolling in dough. Mark is a nice guy, but he's a teacher, and Jessica works part-time at a boutique. My parents, of course, were all for it. My mother started researching villas in Tuscany, and my father was looking at flights. I, being the practical one, gently pointed out that maybe, just maybe, a destination wedding for a family that is mostly based in Ohio might be a bit extravagant. Jessica scoffed at me. Oh, she really scoffed. She said I was jealous and negative and that I just didn't want her to be happy. My mother chimed in, saying I should be supportive and that Jessica deserved a fairytale wedding. My father just cleared his throat and changed the subject to golf. Eventually, thankfully, even Jessica realized that Italy was financially unrealistic, even with my parents' generous contributions. So she compromised on a local vineyard. Local meaning still quite expensive, but at least within driving distance. The vineyard is beautiful, I'll give her that. Rolling hills, picturesque vines, rustic chic barn for the reception. Very Instagrammable, which I'm sure was a major factor in Jessica's decision. Then came the dress. Oh, the dress. Jessica tried on approximately 1 million dresses, each one more elaborate and expensive than the last. She dragged my mother and me to every bridal boutique within a 100-mile radius. Each appointment was an hours-long ordeal of Jessica preening in front of mirrors, dramatically sighing and demanding our opinions, only to completely disregard them and then get upset if we didn't agree with her final, usually most expensive, choice. I tried to be patient. I really did. I reminded myself it was her wedding, she was excited, and wedding dress shopping is supposed to be a special experience. But after the 10th boutique and the 15th dress that cost more than my monthly rent, my patience started to wear thin. One particularly memorable dress appointment was at a high-end salon in a neighboring city. Jessica had seen a dress online that she was absolutely obsessed with. It was a designer gown, covered in lace and beading with a train that could probably be seen from space. The price tag, a cool $15,000. Jessica tried it on, and to be fair, it was beautiful. She looked like a princess. She posed and twirled and gushed about how it was the one. My mother was tearing up, saying it was perfect. I, however, was having a hard time reconciling the $15,000 price tag with the fact that Jessica and Mark were planning on buying a house after the wedding and were supposedly saving up. I cautiously suggested that maybe we could look at some other options, just to compare. You know, be responsible adults and consider the budget. Big mistake, huge. Jessica's face contorted. She accused me of trying to ruin her dream. She said I was jealous because I'd never had a fairytale wedding. For the record, I've been happily married to my wonderful husband, Anthony, for 5 years, and our wedding was lovely and perfectly us, even if it wasn't $15,000 for the dress alone. She started crying, dramatically, of course. My mother shot me a withering glare that could curdle milk. She told me I was being insensitive and negative, and that Jessica deserved to have whatever she wanted for her wedding. My father, who had tagged along on this particular shopping trip, just mumbled something about needing to make a phone call and disappeared to the parking lot. So Jessica got the $15,000 dress. Of course she did, and my parents happily paid for it, because, Jessica deserves it. The dress was just the tip of the iceberg. The flower arrangements were another saga. Jessica changed her mind about the flowers approximately 50 times. One week it was all white roses, the next week it was wildflowers, then peonies, then back to roses, but only blush pink roses, not white. Each change meant more calls to the florist, more revisions to the contract, and inevitably, more money. The invitations were another ordeal. Jessica wanted custom-designed invitations with calligraphy and hand-painted watercolor details. They were gorgeous, I'll admit, but again, incredibly expensive. And when the first proof came back, Jessica decided she didn't like the font, so they had to be completely redone. More money. Then there were the bridesmaids' dresses. Jessica initially picked out these hideous, bright pink, sequin monstrosities that looked like they belonged in a bad 80s movie. My other bridesmaid, Tiffany, and I politely suggested that maybe something a little more understated would be better. Jessica threw a fit, accused us of trying to sabotage her wedding, and insisted that pink sequins were totally chic, and we just didn't understand fashion. After days of arguing and my mother intervening on Jessica's behalf, we finally compromised on a slightly less offensive shade of pink, but still sequin dresses. They weren't great, but at least they weren't neon pink. And of course, Jessica insisted that we all pay for our own dresses, alterations, shoes, hair, and makeup. Because it's our honor to be bridesmaids. The list goes on and on. The DJ, the photographer, the cake, the favors, the decorations, every single detail was meticulously planned, endlessly debated, and always the most expensive option. And through it all, Jessica remained blissfully unaware of the financial strain she was putting on my parents, or frankly, on anyone around her. It was just assumed that everyone would bend over backwards to make her wedding perfect, no matter the cost or inconvenience. And I, like a dutiful older sister, mostly went along with it. I helped with DIY decorations, I went to dress fittings, I listened to Jessica vent about flower arrangements, I even smiled and nodded when she talked about her dream wedding for the millionth time. I tried to be supportive. I really did, but inside I was seething. Seething at Jessica's entitlement, at my parents' enabling behavior, and at my own inability to say enough is enough. It felt like everyone was walking on eggshells around Jessica, afraid to upset her, afraid to challenge her, afraid to burst her perfect little wedding bubble. And then came the rehearsal dinner. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for the Friday night before the wedding. It was being held at a fancy Italian restaurant in town. Jessica had insisted on a sit-down dinner, of course, not just a casual buffet, and she had meticulously planned the menu, the seating chart, and even the background music. Anthony and I arrived at the restaurant a little early. We were greeted by my parents and Jessica and Mark. Jessica was wearing a white cocktail dress, naturally, because even the rehearsal dinner had to be all about her. She was positively glowing, radiating smugness and self-satisfaction. We sat down at our assigned table. The restaurant was beautiful, the ambience was lovely, and the food smelled amazing. Everyone was chatting and laughing except for me. I was feeling increasingly tense and uncomfortable. The weeks of wedding planning stress, the constant catering to Jessica's demands, the simmering resentment I had been suppressing, it all felt like it was about to explode. As we were waiting for our appetizers, Jessica stood up to make a toast. She clinked her glass and everyone quieted down. She started talking about how excited she was to marry Mark, how much she loved him, and how grateful she was to all of us for being there to celebrate with them. Standard rehearsal dinner toast stuff. Then she started talking about how perfect everything was, how her wedding was going to be the most magical day ever, and how she was so lucky to have such amazing family and friends. And that's when it happened. Something inside me just snapped. I don't know if it was the word perfect, or the smug look on her face, or just the culmination of months of pent-up frustration, but I suddenly couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, interrupting Jessica's toast. Everyone at the table turned to look at me, surprised. Jessica looked annoyed. "What is it, Deborah?" she asked, her voice dripping with impatience. "Were you going to make a toast too?" I took a deep breath and looked at her. "Yes, Jessica," I said. "I do have something to say." But it's not exactly a toast. My parents looked alarmed. Mark looked confused. Tiffany, who was sitting next to me, gave me a worried glance. Jessica just rolled her eyes. "Oh, here we go," she muttered. I ignored her and continued. "Jessica," I said, "you've been talking about how perfect everything is, how magical your wedding is going to be. But you know what's not perfect? You know what's not magical?" Jessica frowned. "What are you talking about?" I looked around the table, making eye contact with each person. I'm talking about the fact that Jessica is not being honest with Mark. I'm talking about the fact that there's a big secret she's been keeping from him. The table went silent. You could hear a pin drop. Jessica's face turned white. My mother gasped. My father looked like he wanted to disappear under the table. Mark looked utterly bewildered. Jessica stammered, "What secret?" "What are you talking about? Deborah, stop it." I ignored her pleas. "Mark," I said, turning to him directly, "do you know why Jessica was really between jobs for those 6 months last year? Do you know why she was suddenly so stressed and anxious and needed to move back home with Mom and Dad for a while?" Mark looked even more confused. She said she was just taking some time off to figure things out. She was feeling burnt out from her last job. I took another deep breath. "Mark, the reason Jessica was between jobs is because she was fired. She was fired from her job at the boutique for stealing. She was caught shoplifting clothes and jewelry and was fired on the spot." The silence was deafening. Jessica was staring at me, her eyes wide with horror. My mother was shaking her head, mouthing, "No, Deborah, no." My father was just staring blankly at his plate. Tiffany looked like she was trying to simultaneously disappear and comfort me. Anthony put his hand on my arm, a silent gesture of support. Mark looked at Jessica, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Jessica?" Jessica started to cry. Tears streamed down her face. She shook her head, vehemently denying it. "No, it's not true. Deborah is lying. She's just trying to ruin my wedding," I sighed. "Jessica," I said, "it's not a lie. I know it's true because Mom told me. She was so upset and worried about you. She made me promise not to tell anyone, especially Mark, but I can't keep quiet anymore. Mark deserves to know the truth about who he's marrying." Jessica's crying intensified. "Mom," she wailed, turning to my mother. "Tell them it's not true. Tell them Deborah is lying." My mother looked pale and flustered. She avoided Mark's gaze. "Well," she said hesitantly, it's a bit more complicated than that, Deborah." "Complicated?" I repeated, incredulous. "Mom, she was fired for stealing." "How is that complicated?" My mother wrung her hands. "Well, it was just a misunderstanding. Jessica made a mistake. She was under a lot of pressure at work. It was just a one-time thing." "A one-time thing that got you fired and resulted in a police report," I added, because yes, there was a police report. My mother had conveniently left that part out. Jessica gasped. "How do you know about the police report?" she shrieked. "Mom, did you tell her?" My mother looked even more uncomfortable. "Well, I just wanted someone to talk to. I was so worried about you, Jessica." Mark was still staring at Jessica, his face etched with hurt and betrayal. "Jessica, is this true?" he asked again, his voice firmer this time. "Were you fired for stealing? Was there a police report?" Jessica finally stopped crying and looked at Mark. Her voice was small and weak. "Yes," she whispered, "it's true, but it was a mistake. I didn't mean to. I was stressed and I just panicked." Mark stood up abruptly, pushing his chair back from the table. He looked at Jessica, then at my parents, then at me. He shook his head in disbelief. I need to go," he said, his voice choked with emotion. He turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving us all in stunned silence. Jessica burst into fresh tears. "Mom, Dad," she wailed, "do something, go after him, fix this." My parents looked at each other, then at Jessica, then at me. My mother glared at me, her eyes blazing with anger. "Deborah, how could you do this?" she hissed. "How could you ruin Jessica's wedding?" "Ruin her wedding?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Mom, she lied to Mark. She kept a huge secret from him. I didn't ruin her wedding, she did. By being dishonest and entitled and thinking she could get away with anything." My father finally spoke, his voice low and disapproving. "Deborah, this was not your place. You should have stayed out of it. This was between Jessica and Mark." "Oh, so I should just stand by and watch while Jessica starts her marriage based on a lie?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Is that what you wanted me to do? Just pretend everything is perfect and magical while she's hiding a criminal record from her fiancé?" My mother stood up, her face red with fury. "You are unbelievable, Deborah. You are so jealous of Jessica. You've always been jealous of her. You just wanted to hurt her. Jealous." I laughed, a bitter, humorless laugh. "Jealous of what, Mom?" "Jealous of her being the golden child who can do no wrong. jealous of her getting everything she wants while I'm always the responsible, practical one who has to clean up her messes. Jealous of her lying and stealing and getting away with it. No, Mom, I'm not jealous. I'm just tired. Tired of the double standards, tired of the favoritism, tired of always being the bad guy for telling the truth. I stood up too, pushing my chair back. Anthony, let's go, I said. I turned to my family. Enjoy the wedding, I said, my voice cold and flat. If there even is a wedding after this. And with that, Anthony and I walked out of the restaurant, leaving my family to pick up the pieces of Jessica's shattered, perfect wedding. I'm honestly shocked at how many people responded to my original post. I didn't expect it to get so much attention, but I appreciate all the support and validation. It's been a whirlwind few days, to say the least. Here's a little update on what's happened since the rehearsal dinner fallout. Update 1. First of all, Mark did not show up for the wedding. Not surprisingly, I suppose. Jessica called him repeatedly on Saturday morning, begging him to reconsider, but he wouldn't answer her calls. My parents tried to intervene, calling Mark's parents and even driving to his house, but he refused to see or speak to any of them. The wedding was officially called off about an hour before it was supposed to start. Jessica was predictably hysterical. She locked herself in her bridal suite at the vineyard and refused to come out. My mother was running around like a chicken with its head cut off, trying to salvage the situation, trying to convince Mark to come back, trying to comfort Jessica, trying to blame me for everything. My father just sat in a corner, looking defeated and miserable. The guests started arriving, oblivious to the drama unfolding behind the scenes. My mother and father had to awkwardly greet them and explain that the wedding was postponed due to a family emergency. Most of the guests were confused and disappointed, but understanding. A few, however, were less than thrilled, especially those who had traveled from out of town. Tiffany and I, along with the other bridesmaids, were stuck in the bridesmaid suite, feeling completely helpless and incredibly awkward. We didn't know what to do or say. We tried to comfort Jessica, who was still sobbing uncontrollably, but she just kept screaming at us to leave her alone and blaming me for ruining her life. Eventually, my parents managed to get Jessica out of the bridal suite and took her home. The guests were informed that the reception was also canceled, and everyone slowly started to leave. The beautiful vineyard, which was supposed to be the scene of Jessica's magical wedding, was instead filled with a palpable sense of disappointment and disaster. Anthony and I left shortly after the wedding was officially canceled. We went home, exhausted and emotionally drained. I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Relief that the wedding nightmare was over, sadness for Mark, and for what could have been, guilt for the way things had unfolded, and a strange sense of vindication that Jessica's carefully constructed facade had finally crumbled. The aftermath has been intense. My parents are furious with me. My mother has called me multiple times a day, screaming at me, accusing me of being a horrible sister, a selfish daughter, and a vindictive bitch. She keeps saying I deliberately sabotaged Jessica's wedding out of jealousy and spite. She refuses to listen to any explanation or justification. In her eyes, I am solely responsible for everything that went wrong. My father is slightly less overtly angry, but still deeply disappointed in me. He keeps saying I should have handled things differently, that I should have talked to Jessica privately, that I should have given her a chance to tell Mark herself. He doesn't seem to understand that Jessica had months to tell Mark the truth, and she chose not to. He also doesn't seem to grasp the level of entitlement and manipulation that Jessica has always gotten away with. Jessica, of course, is not speaking to me. She has blocked me on social media and refuses to answer my calls or texts. I'm sure she is telling everyone who will listen what a terrible person I am and how I ruined her life. I'm bracing myself for the inevitable smear campaign. Mark, on the other hand, surprisingly sent me a text message on Sunday. It was short and simple. It just said, "Thank you, Deborah, you did the right thing." That text meant more to me than I can express. It validated my decision and made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't completely wrong after all. Tiffany has been incredibly supportive. She's been checking in on me, listening to me vent, and reminding me that I did what I had to do. Anthony has also been amazing. He's been my rock throughout this whole ordeal. He keeps telling me I'm brave and honest and that I shouldn't let my family's anger get to me. So, that's where things stand. My family is fractured, Jessica's wedding is off, and I'm the villain of the story. But despite all the drama and negativity, I can't honestly say I regret what I did. Jessica needed to be held accountable for her actions. Mark deserved to know the truth, And frankly, I was tired of being the scapegoat and the doormat. I know some people might think I was too harsh, too dramatic, too public with my revelation. Maybe I could have handled things differently. Maybe I should have stayed out of it altogether. But I honestly don't know what else I could have done. Keeping silent would have been enabling Jessica's dishonesty and perpetuating the toxic family dynamic that has plagued us for years. I'm prepared for the long-term fallout. I know my relationship with my parents and Jessica may never be the same. But I also know that I acted with integrity and honesty, and that's something I can live with. And who knows, maybe in the long run, this whole mess will actually be a catalyst for positive change. Maybe Jessica will finally learn to take responsibility for her actions. Maybe my parents will finally see past their golden child blinders. Maybe, just maybe, this whole disaster will lead to some much-needed family therapy. One can only hope, right, Reddit? Anyway, thanks again for all the support and advice. It really means a lot. I'll keep you updated if anything else develops. In the meantime, I'm going to try to focus on the positive things in my life, like my wonderful husband, my supportive friends, and the fact that I no longer have to wear that hideous sequined bridesmaid dress. Small victories, Reddit, small victories. So Reddit AITA8. What would you have done in my situation? Am I wrong for feeling this way? Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.